Hello, everyone. My name is Rafia Maxey. I'm a mother, I'm a social worker, and I'm the founder of Soul Survivors of Chicago. It's a non-for-profit organization that we started after the loss of my son, Jamal Clay, May 27, 2020. Today, I want to invite you to hear discussions from friends and persons who knew Jamal very well in this Listen and Learn. Perspectives from friends who lost someone to suicide. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Listen and Learn.
I'm Taylor Nash. I think it's good to mention how long I've known Jamal. I've known him since we were about like 8 or 9. I'm 21 now, so yeah.
I'm Asia Lucas. I've known Jamal. I knew him since I was about 3 or 4 years old. So about 16 years of my life, I knew him. 21 years old now.
Wow. Thank you guys so much for coming on today. I get questions often as I go through this journey of giving education and knowledge and awareness about suicide and prevention. But I also get questions about you all and what you're doing, what life is like. And oftentimes I don't know the answer. So now is the time that I get a chance to ask and hopefully get that from you guys. The first question I have is, can you tell me and tell us about the day you found out about when Jamal had passed? What happened?
Well, for me, the day before I was diagnosed with an eye disease. So the next day I said I was just gonna rest. And I remember sleeping on the couch and hearing my mom just scream. It was to a point where it woke me up. And I remember going to her and hearing her say, Jamal died. And I remember saying, Jamal who? Because she couldn't have been talking about Jamal Clay. In my mind, that was just not true. I remember being just kind of mad at her because I was like, why would you even say something like that? I know you're lying to me. And she got back on the phone. She's like, well, we're going to go over to Jamal's mom's house, Miss Maxey.
I actually found out the day after from Asia. So I was so grateful because during that time, I have cut a lot of ties with people that I met during middle school. It wasn't on purpose. It just happened that way. Life happens. Jamal and a few other people were some of the only people that I talked to during that time of my life. And so to receive that text from Asia, I was like, I'm not trying to make a joke out of it, but I was like, stop playing. That's not real. But I knew when she texted me that something was wrong. And she just said, Taylor. And I was like, yes. I was very scared. And I knew it was about Jamal. I knew it was about him. And when she confirmed it by just saying Jamal died, that was very straight to the point. And I'm like, can I call you? So allowing her to really talk to me and explain to me what happened, it made me I immediately fell to the ground and was crying. So that just says that right there. I went to my mom. She looked at me with the most scared face on her face. What is wrong? What's wrong? I was like, Jamal died. And she was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. Because even my family, we love Jamal. We still do.
That morning, I had got a call from my boss about work. I had just got my job back, my construction job for the summer. So it started off, getting that good news. And then I think I probably made breakfast for my sisters and went to go lay down. And then somebody called me and they were like, Jamal took his life. And I was laying down, and so it kind of took me by surprise. And I was like, what do you mean? So he said it again, and he was like, Jamal took his life. And I kind of just went blank. I didn't really understand what was going on. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make some phone calls, blah, 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 whatever. And so it started to hit me. I was getting dressed to head to y'all's house. And I was in the shower. All of a sudden, I just broke down, completely. I didn't know what was going on. Started crying, didn't really understand the magnitude of the situation.
I remember Jamal lived about 3 minutes away from me, and it felt like the longest 3 minute drive. And I was just, at that moment, I still didn't really believe my mom. I just kind of felt like it wasn't real. Not until I got out of the car. And at the same time, Miss Maxie was pulling up and she's like, Jamal, you meant a lot to him and, he really loved you. And in that moment, it started to become real for me. And it didn't fully become real until we got inside the house and he wasn't there. Because I just knew that, like, when we get there at the house, he's going to be there. He's going to be there. And everything my mom said was just not true. But when I got there, two of his friends were there and just like talking to them. And it was like, that's really when it became real for me that he was gone.
And so I called my parents. And so my dad, he came and picked me up because I didn't have a car. He came and picked me up. I was gonna see my mom. I just told her I'm just gonna see what's going on. But I just got some bad news. Let me just, And so we got to y'all's house and I seen all the cars there and it hit me again. I was like, there's no way this is real. Like it was an unreal situation because for me, I've never had anybody close to me like pass, especially somebody like Jamal, like was one of my closest friends. And so pulling up to y'all's house, it was just like surreal. And I seen Jalen outside and he hugged me and we hugged each other for like a minute or two. And we just crying. And after that, my dad, he was like, let's go in the house. And then I think the first thing I did was go downstairs. I just seen everybody downstairs and it was just like, they were blank face, like no emotion, like nothing. And then my dad was like, let's go upstairs. And that's when I saw you. And when you hugged me, that was like the confirmation for me, like life is going to be completely different. And like growing up, you are kind of like a second mom to me. Like we spent plenty of weekends at your house and like seeing you like that like broke me for real. And that was kind of like my indicator for like what I'm going through is real. What everybody else is going through is real.
But it was a lot for my family to take in at once because it was just like with the pandemic at the time, we were isolated, and then like with protests going on, this was just the icing on the cake. I even had to tell people that I knew, like, I'm not getting on social media. Y'all aren't gonna see me. Y'all got June. Y'all got it. And it was a lot.
I remember going back home and having to call my other friends and saying, he's gone, like actually saying the words is when it became real. And it just kind of shocked my world. And I just didn't want to believe it at the time. I just wanted to believe that it was just some type of bad dream. And I just knew if I went to sleep that night, when I woke up, it would all just, not be real. He'd be there. I'd be able to call him. I don't know. It just changed everything that had happened that day, everything that had happened that week for me. It's just, everything just changed.
Honestly, like grief is a processing thing. So of course, in the beginning, I was very shocked. Asia's very real when she said it didn't feel real because it didn't. But at the same time, I don't know. This is gonna sound. It might sound profound, but I'm not trying to. But it was just like I felt there was some relief because I felt like I was like, okay, well, in my head, how I had rationalized it at the time was like, there's no more suffering. Like I wouldn't want my friend to suffer any kind of way, especially a childhood friend that I cared deeply about. So that was the decision that he made, whether I agree with it or not. But the whole process of me understanding, like, okay, I'm grieving, but at the same time, I don't have to worry. This is not a worry. So let's come back. And during that time, like I was definitely into spirituality, so it was helping. But like I said in the beginning, it was definitely a shock and it was a lot at once.
And it was weird because, like I said, I've never had anybody close to me pass, and so it was like, wow, like this is real life, and like nothing was ever gonna be the same.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do agree that it was very surreal. I can remember that day as vividly than any other day in my life. And I remember those emotions and definitely having my experience of a denial and actually losing my sense of hearing because of
Mm-hmm.
the trauma of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do remember that very vividly. I'm wondering what your feelings about suicide before Jamal passed were like. When you heard the word suicide or you heard mental wellness or somebody who wanted to harm themselves, what kind of thoughts came to your mind then? And then can you share what your feelings are now that you've experienced someone you've lost to suicide, if there's any differences?
For me, I took it seriously, but it wasn't something that I would have said I would have advocated for until it was Jamal. Like it was something that was important, but now I feel like I'm more likely to post something about suicide, tell people to get help, reach out to my friends in ways, because I'm not the type of person before this to like really call people all the time or text them. But now I make a habit of just randomly texting my friends just to make sure they're okay, just to check on them mentally, posting resources that are out there because truthfully, a lot of people, there are resources, but people don't know about them. So I try to be more of like posting it, trying to get people to recognize that it's real, recognize that suicide or like a person that's depressed isn't just the person that's in their room all day sad, but a person that can be happy and things like that. And just that's kind of changed my outlook on it of just trying to be there more for my friends in general and just talking about it more, not making it something that people don't talk about. I feel like it's not really talked about. Just make it something that's more common. You talk about it more, be more open about your feelings and emotions. And a lot of people don't like to do that.
Mhm. That's very real. I, for myself, I know that suicide has personally played a theme in my life. I have dealt with family members, close friends that have had attempts. Jamal was the closest one to me that had, an attempt that, did what it did. And it was like one of the first times ever I really understood like the severity of it, honestly. Because it's permanent. That is a permanent decision. And that let me know more than I think I've probably learned in my 21 years of living so soon. When I was dealing with it, like I've had, like I said, family members and friends that have attempted or just like self-harm in general, because that is a sure a sign of being suicidal to a certain extent. It can be a precursor. So I've definitely dealt with that um, in my lifetime. Not necessarily so personally. I've been lucky enough to have the will to, not make those kind of decisions for myself. But I went after like with Jamal and just learning more about like the severity of it, and not just the severity in terms of like, oh, we shouldn't talk about it, it's taboo. The severity of like I said, it's a permanent decision that real people face. Like you think that it's not common, but it very much so is, especially among Black men, young Black men, because they have the highest rate for suicide in this country. So I refuse to let it be like severe in the sense of we can't talk about it. It's severe in the sense we need to start talking about it. And Jamal really made me process that in a different way, especially like even saying his name. Like that was hard for me. It was very hard to say his name at first. But then I remembered, reading books. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm a reader. I was reading, and while I was reading, just honoring people that have passed that you have loved by saying their name. Like that's how you keep their memory alive, by saying their name. And I'm sure we've seen that in protests with Black Lives Matter movement. Say her name. Like keep the memory of this person alive. So now I'm very adamant. I say Jamal because that was a real person in my life that I meant dearly. So I never want to lose sight of that, and that's a big thing that I've learned when it comes to suicide.
Mhm.
So I say that I had an understanding of suicide. I didn't understand the magnitude of it until it happened. So I'll say like before Jamal, it was kind of just like something you hear on the news, you hear on social media, and it never happened to anyone around me. And so I didn't necessarily understand the feelings that come with it or understand like this is what happens or understand like mental health. Like in the Black community, like since I've been in college, like I've learned like mental health is not really something that's spoken. And even growing up, And going through my experiences and thinking back on it, it's like there's not too much mental health talks or anything to talk about feelings or depression or anything. And so before Jamal, it was like those things you don't talk about. And like even after I would have a conversation with somebody and be like, that's not real. Anxiety isn't real. And like blah blah blah. But after I would say it made me more aware of myself and my emotional intelligence, and then also other people's emotional intelligence. And it kind of made me think more about the way that I treat people and the way that other people may treat people as well. Just because like you never know what's going on behind closed doors. It can be somebody's worst day of their life, and you say, "Hey, I like the shirt you're wearing," and that will make their day. Um, and like things like that. I really think about the little things. Being in college and like being so involved in the things that I do, I work with people all day, every day, and so having those interactions with people, I know now like little things can make a big difference, whether it's positive or negative. And so I understand to be gentle with people because you never know what's going on behind closed doors. So
Wow, that's really powerful. Yeah, I think that's one of the things I'm learning is that, I've looked at this now differently. And when I see somebody with a sign on the street begging for money, or a mental health person walking down the street and seeking themselves, or just someone who says that they're depressed, I look at it a different lens. And Jamal was the type of kid that definitely, I believe, bottled up a lot of his feelings and was really indoctrinated, just as a lot of black men are, to just keep it going. It's not real, as you say.
yeah,
You're soft, you got to pray about it, you don't have God in your life, and on and on and on. And then
mhm,
that becomes where you become your own therapist.
yeah,
And quite often it's hard. So I do see that there have been changes in the way that you um, bond with your friends and get more, clarity about bringing awareness, as well as the check in, and really knowing before how that feeling of suicide was a different feeling and how serious it could be now. I'm wondering what you would say to someone who is thinking about, or you would be concerned about, that is having feelings of wanting to maybe hurt themselves, or just showing differences that come up. And since this incident, what would you, kind of do in those instances if you had it?
um, that's tough. I would say for me, what I've been learning to do is just listen. Um, I don't think people take the time enough to actually listen to what people are going through. And I feel like that's a big thing. And just being non-judgmental because we all have things we go through. And so just being a listening ear and trying to see what I can do to help them, not me be like, hey, let's do this. Hey, what do you want? Like, what's some things you want to to change, and not like place my own thoughts and feelings on them, and just be there really, because that's all you can do. Like, you can't make somebody do anything they don't want to do, but also in that situation, help give them the resources. Like, just advise that, and I know that kind of contradicts what I'm saying, but like just advise that. Don't be like, hey, you need to do this to feel better, blah blah blah, but advise them to do the things that would help. Um, and like I said, just be there, because sometimes people may feel like they're alone, but like if you just sit there and listen, it makes, in my experience, it makes people feel better, because they know that you're there with them, and like they're not just going through those things that they're going through. Like, you're there to support them, to be that shoulder to lean on, or just to help pick them up. Like, just being there is, to me, is one of the most important things that we can do.
Yeah. Me personally, I would just say the first thing I would say, you're not alone. Like a lot of times when it comes to suicide and people that have died from suicide in their community, they feel alone. Like, how can I get support for this? How exactly am I supposed to make it make sense? because that's a big part of it too. And that's me being real. That's part of the grieving process. And when you're doing that by yourself, it's not good. So I always advise, like, or not advise, but I would say the first thing I would say is you're not alone. However you're feeling, whatever you're feeling is valid because it's a shock. When you're in shock, it's like your body tenses up, your heart is pounding, you're not really sure what's going on. So whatever you feel, honor it. And that's just how you feel. And I would say get support. Talk to your friends. Talk to your friends. Like, it sounds really simple, but it's not. To be vulnerable with your friends, to trust your friends enough for them to be able to support you. Let people support you. Like, you might want to isolate and figure it out on your own, but let people that are there for you be there for you and let them know what's going on, because it can be a lot to hold it in on yourself. And I dealt with that for a little bit too. So being honest and allowing your friends to be your friends is also a big part as well. Like I said, even in the beginning, you're not alone. Even like, I'm not trying to get spiritual, but like, you're just not alone in general. You have ancestors, you have spirit guides and things of that nature that protect you. So there's a lot of times we feel alone, but it's not really like that. You just have to think about that. So yeah.
Well, for me, I would say, like Taylor said, realize that you're not alone with it, but also take up ways that will help you deal with it, whether that be therapy. For me, I actually started journaling after because I wasn't really ready to talk to other people about what happened. But I found for like the first 2 weeks, it was easier for me to like write in a journal everything I was feeling. And then when I was able to talk to my friends and family, that's when I started opening up to them more. And like Taylor said, leaning on them because they are your friends for a reason. Allow them to see you like that, right? Talk to people about it, do things that will make you feel happier. Because I know for a while there, I was just like, I was in shock for a long time. So it was just me not really wanting to participate in things that made me happy before and things like that. It was like slowly getting back to that, doing things for you, things that'll make you feel happy, talking to other people, reaching out to other people, knowing that no matter what's happening, no matter how you feel in that moment, you will get through it. Know that you'll never forget them and you'll never be completely over it, but you'll be able to accept what happened and move forward with your life. It's not going to be, a thing that happens right away, but eventually you'll get to the point where it's like, I can talk to about this person without, immediately crying or like being like, I'm not doing this. I'm not having this conversation with people. Eventually you'll get to that point where you're able to like open up with people. And it's not an easy process, but it's a process that you have to work through because that is your reality now. You might not want to face that reality, but it is your reality. And you can't change that. You just have to work on this new reality. This is how it is now, and you have to face that. And that'd be one of the things that I would tell them is just working through your feelings, right? There's no one way that's going to work for you that, works for others, but find something in your life that makes it worth it and just keep pushing through that. Every day it's going to be hard, but as long as you get through that day, that's the important part, really.
Yeah. And just allowing yourself to be open to receiving help, receiving love. Because sometimes when it comes to love, especially in a grieving process, it's like grief is basically love that you can't give in the physical sense. Like you can't, that is just love that you can't give, that you can't show. And so it's very hard to actually try to like receive love after that. You might want to fight it, but be open to it and allow, like Asia and I have said, people in your life to be there for you in the way that they can. So yeah.
I really agree, definitely. And that's a hashtag actually to be there or be the one that Suicide Prevention Month, which is this month of September, is really pushing. My last question, because you guys really truly gave me some insight I never thought about, and often thought I was just alone in that feeling. But as we work forward and really try to bring about awareness about suicide and mental health and the support you say we need in the communities, and knowing that this is something that all of us have experienced in some facet. And what I mean by that is that there's never been a time in my life that I've said, I'm tired, I don't think it's fair, this is not supposed to be happening to me. And because I can know that that tunnel exists. I'm pretty sure everyone else has had that experience. It's just about getting to the end of that tunnel and knowing there's a light, even though you can't see it. But what would you need or want to see in our community to help prevent this from happening to someone else? What would you say as your experience and what you've experienced in the loss of Jamal that a community could do in order to help not have this happen anymore?
I think one of the big things was just really just talk about it, make it something that's discussed, not something that's like, like I said before, there are resources that are out there, but make them more well known, right? Even in schools, I feel like we don't really have those resources. We know that there are counselors, but they don't really help, in my opinion. But having actual counselors there that are able to help kids if they do need it, and knowing that, we have this counselor here on, in schools, whether it be high school, middle school, colleges, that are here to talk to you, making that more accessible, making them cheaper as well, because price also is a barrier for a lot of people. Just doing things like that, and not just in schools, but in your community, because right now in Matson, I don't know a single resource that we can actually get that helps people that feel like suicide is their only option. I'd like to see more people talk about the options that are out there, and knowing that there are people that can help you ways to cope with how you're feeling, whether that just be reading one book a week or, something simple, something that you're looking forward to each day. Because I have heard that if you have something you're looking forward to, that helps even if you're depressed. So talking to people about that, making sure that people know that there are ways to get help, reaching out to people that you know, having people out there that are constantly trying to talk to the people, make it known through social media or schools, whatever, that these are where these resources are at. This is how you get help, teaching the ways to work through whatever it is you're feeling.
Yep. I agree with everything Asia said. Just on a more personal philosophical level, share your love. Stop keeping your love. Let people know that you love them, period. When after Jamal died, there was a book that really resonated with me. It's All About Love by Bell Hooks. R.I.P. to that woman. That book really helped me and healed me, understanding the importance of community when it comes to love, the importance of being able to receive love, knowing what it is, and being able to share it and not keep it. Because this is what happens. I feel like situations like this are what happen when people aren't really sure that they're loved, or it's uneasy for them to believe that they're loved. And you just have to, when you see someone like that, you have to be able to reassure them that they are loved. That's one of the most important things to me. And I try to practice that, especially after Jamal died, to not hide or harbor my love for people anymore. Because when you're in a lovelessness, it's not healthy and it's hard to come out of. So that's one thing I would say, is just share your love with people in your life. And because the people that know that they're loved know that there's other options always. So if someone and know the signs, honestly, personally, outside of Jamal, I had a roommate who tried to attempt in our room. I wasn't there, but she had an attempt, and I knew before it happened, because there were certain signs of just depression and self-harming tendencies, not necessarily physically, but it can be like not going to class and then not doing the work as well. That's, what are we doing here? So there's things of that nature. Knowing the signs, I think that is part of the education process, and within our community, knowing the signs of suicide and things of that nature, so that we can understand how to best help someone in that situation. Because if we don't know the signs, there won't be any kind of situation for prevention. So those are the two biggest things I've learned, is knowing the signs and just sharing your love with people that you care about, and sharing your love even with strangers. Don't be so scared to share love in general, because you never know who needs it.
Yeah, to touch on what Taylor said, that's something that I've noticed I do now more, is telling people that I love them, like my friends, family, just sharing that love and letting people know that they are loved. And that's something I feel like I didn't really do before, but now it's like my friends will get random texts from me, just letting them know how much they mean to me, how much I love them. Same with family, just letting them know that I'm thinking about them, stuff like that. Just spreading that, just letting people know.
I would say reach out and talk about the things that's going on, and that's easier said than done, of course. But for me, in my experience, like I I'm a supporter of therapy. I've never been, but I support it because for me, that's the way I get through things. It's just talking to people, talking to my close friends, talking to my parents, talking to anybody who's willing to listen. And that way, it gets all of the thoughts out of my head. Anything that I'm worried about, or anything I'm going through. It's good to reach out and have somebody else, get a taste of what's going on and see what they can do for me, or just getting those thoughts out. Like I just think that's a big thing, and that's kind of the way that I cope with anything I have going on. I just love talking to people. Like I can sit for hours and just talk about anything. And so reaching out and reach out to people that you can trust and that will give you the help you need for anything you got going on. And like I said, therapy. I've heard a lot of stories about therapy, and therapy is such like frowned upon thing, and I didn't understand it until I got older. But I see why. Like I see, I don't see why people talk down about therapy, but I see why people didn't go to therapy. But I know now that this is something you should do. Like therapy is good for you. It's really good for you. It's not this negative thing that people like have this connotation with. But therapy, definitely advise therapy if that's something that works for you.
Like that. Thank you. Yes, to destigmatize therapy is a very, very important thing because before it sounds like you had an idea of what it was, and now that you understand it as being older, you applaud it and then would encourage somebody because before it could have been really a helper or a catalyst to somebody, you know, like Jamal, who didn't have those outlets, and we say that those resources are very important. So I agree. Well, I want to end here, and definitely, if you had any closing comments or things that you wanted to say, you're free to do so. And
I'll say first, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. You know how grateful I am for you in my life. So really appreciate that. And I know I told you last time I love everything you're doing, because this is important, and a lot of people don't really put forth the effort to do the things you're doing, and I love that. And I want to see you continue to do things like this, just because it's just as important to me as it is to you. And appreciate you for having me on here.
I want to thank you, ladies, for taking the time out today to talk about a very, very important subject and your perspective as someone who's been on the front line of knowing someone who lost their life to suicide and what you would do as a community to help this from happening again. And your advice is golden. Oh, well, thank you. I want to say to you as well, as we end, that um, I want you all to succeed so bad in honor of him. I will never see him do the things that you all are going to do. So I'm like one of your biggest cheerleaders. And although he couldn't walk the journey with you, it means so much to see you do it and be a voice and stand up for somebody else in another city or town or next door neighbor who just might be going through the same thing. And you are a very special part of a movement. So your words and your thoughts are really, in my opinion, are going to be valued beyond what you think, because we do need to know. And you have the very much experience. You know Jamal better than I do because you spent most of your time with him, being in school and of course activities. And as a parent, you share your child with friends. So of course you know him, and to have you talk about him today is really touches my heart. I'm really full. So with that being said, I just want to thank you, Chris.
Thank
With
you.
that being said, yeah. So with that being said, I will close out today.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.